we don't know what we're doing. Like, we've never been parents before.
Mm.
So we are a team in this. Like, we're in this together. Like, help me help you.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining me. My name is Reesa and I'm your host. We are talking to real families about real stories here on The Real Family Eats, where we've got food for thought and thoughtful food. So let's eat. Hey everyone, my guest today is the lovely Celeste. Hi Celeste, thanks so much for being a guest on our show today.
Of course, my pleasure.
So for those of you that don't know Celeste, can you introduce yourself?
Celeste Hamilton. I've known Reesa from a mom group when our kids were younger, and then we actually lived near each other, so then we would see each other at the time. Reesa's a great host, so she would always have like holiday parties. And then when it was their time to move out of their rental, I'm a realtor, so then I was able to help them move into this beautiful home. So.
Yes, absolutely. Speaking of, do you do realty here in California?
Yes. So we're based out of Temecula, but technically we could do real estate anywhere in California.
Okay.
We could also help set someone up if they're relocating out of state.
Okay.
To find them an agent if they need to buy a home or property out of state. So,
awesome.
But mostly Temecula, Marietta, Winchester, Menifee, all that good stuff.
Awesome. And so for those of you, this is our shameless plug section. How can they find you if they need your services?
We typically use a lot of social media, which a lot of people use nowadays. So we're on Facebook under Hammy Realtor, or you can just find me on Instagram under Celeste_your_realtor. So
perfect. Mm-hmm. And I'll make sure to have all of those linked in our show notes.
Yes.
So if you want to check that out. Awesome. So before we get started, I definitely want to hear your story and I'm so excited to hear it. Can you tell me what recipe are you going to teach me today and why did you pick that one?
Okay. Well, I was thinking I didn't want it to be too long and too hard and too time consuming of a recipe to do on camera. So I was trying to think of something too, because I know a lot of parents struggle with their kids eating like something healthier and not so processed, you know. So a snack that my kids like to have, I have an 8-year-old and 6-year-old, is salsa.
Okay.
And then the thing about salsa is you can always do different variations. And if you have like extra veggies that you can like add in like peppers or carrots, just like base it on like your kid preference. And we're using canned today, but I'm sure people can use fresh if they prefer fresh. And it's just an easy snack that it goes together quickly. You can put it in the fridge. You can have it on hand. You can put it in their lunch or a snack or whatever. So
perfect.
That's what I chose.
Okay, so what do I start with first? Tell me what I need to prep.
So I would first do the cans in the blender.
Okay.
And most people have a blender or anything, so it's super easy, you know, hopefully not too messy.
Yeah.
Because, you know, mom's always having the kitchen
We're
dirty.
always cleaning, right?
Yeah, so, and this is nice too, because then you can like make it once and then like, you won't have to make a mess every time. Like, oh, there's a snack, eat some salsa.
Yeah, so like a larger batch.
Yes.
Is that typically how you do it?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, so I'll get started. And while we're doing that, so tell us a little bit. I know you were talking about kind of some of your parenting journey, as far as figuring out kind of the discipline side of things and what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. So I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, well, we struggle a lot because unbiased, I feel like our kids are pretty smart.
Okay.
And so our son's turning 9 next month, and then our daughter is 6.5. But I think knowing what expectations and standards to have for them, you know, obviously boys and girls are different growing up, and boys, you know, have a little bit more, they can't control their impulses so much. So I think just knowing what to expect out of them and not jumping to like, why did you do that? Or, you know, because like their immediate reaction from something, you know, because they're kids and they're going to argue and fight and whatever. So it's like, I've always heard that for like boys, like their brain and their development and like logic and impulse control isn't even developed until later on. So it's like expecting an 8-year-old to like know what to do in the heat of a moment is like really hard.
Yeah.
Because like even adults don't know how to like
100%. Absolutely.
So it's so hard. Like to know in the moment what expectations you to have and a good punishment, because at the same time, you don't want to feel like you're letting them get away with something either. So it's like, I don't know.
So finding that balance.
Yeah, finding that balance and knowing like where to hold them accountable and what punishment is appropriate, and just not feeling so frustrated by it and just feeling like they should know better. Because like maybe they actually don't know. Like it's not their fault. Like, you know?
Absolutely. And you're absolutely right. So for those that don't know, they're as far as the brain development, you know, most of that time we don't get to that full maturity until our mid-20s.
Which is
and
wild.
that's all across the board, you know, genders.
Yeah.
And so you're absolutely right. There are so many times where you've got adults that are looking at these kiddos, these 8-year-olds, 9, 10, sometimes even, you know, as young as 5, that we're looking at them and having this expectation that, you know, you need to hold yourself to a standard similar to adults. Like if you're in a restaurant, you ought to be able to sit there for the entire time and be quiet and not cause a disruption. So I can absolutely appreciate, you know, some of that struggle there. Before we chat more, okay, so I've got, am I blending this?
So no, you add it all.
Okay.
So we have, so throw in the onions, throw in the salt, let's juice maybe just like 1 lime, and then because we can taste it, and then always add more.
Perfect.
And then depending on like your heat level, I normally do like half a jalapeno, but definitely de-seeded. Yeah, you can always add more or less, and then you can rough chop the cilantro because it's going to get blended anyways.
Perfect. Okay. So tell me where did you learn this information? Was that something that was modeled for you as far as like, you know, how to implement a discipline structure?
No, we don't. No.
Yeah. Tell me more.
I guess just like Googling things or talking to other parents, but no, like I don't remember. I was the youngest of 4, and I mean, you might have a different perspective because you work with family and kids. I think disciplining boys and girls are different, like at the younger years.
Okay.
And I grew up with all girls that were older. I have a younger brother, so I didn't really see like disciplining that aspect, and he has special needs, so that's a whole other topic. But our daughter, we definitely have different difficulties with our daughter versus our son. Our son is more like, he challenges us a little bit more during this chapter, you know, like these younger years. Like she's easier. She likes to be more of a people pleaser. Like she doesn't want to push the boundaries, push the limits. You know, she likes rules and all that. She likes to follow that. Our son likes to push the boundaries and see what he can get away with. And I think he's really smart too. So I think that's a part of it. You know, he and gets bored too. So,
and that's kind of the hard part, right? Because their job at this point is to push the boundaries, is to figure out kind of where am I in this world? What does that look like? At the same time, as a parent, you're going, stop pushing the boundaries. Like this makes it just so much more challenging. Yeah.
But and it's true too, because you don't want to break their spirit either. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's like you want them to be strong and you want them to know how to like voice what they're feeling, and you know, you want them to have an opinion, but at the same time it's like
just listen, please, for like 2 seconds.
I know. Yeah. So it's definitely really hard.
Yeah. What was important about this? Why did you go towards that? You know, I hear you saying that it wasn't maybe necessarily something that was modeled for you. And I feel like I hear that a lot from parents, you know, especially, you know, I want to say like my parents' generation, you heard a lot of like, this is all I know, so this is what I'm going to do.
Right.
And so, you know, I feel like you could have easily gone into kind of that same modality, same mindset. And so I'm curious kind of why did you choose something different? Why did you choose to seek out Google or even just, you know, other people's experiences or opinions?
I guess maybe we felt like, maybe our parents didn't feel so much pressure to be better. I think a lot of parents like our age, like elder millennials or whatever, we want to break any trends that were passed down from older generations. You know, we want our kids to be well-rounded individuals. You know, we want them to have their own thoughts, and, you know, we want them to be problem solvers and critical thinkers. So it's like, I think maybe that's part of it. But
Yeah.
we always want to be, and sorry, I hit the mic. We always tell our kids too, it's like, we don't know what we're doing. We've never been parents before. So we are a team in this. We're in this together. Help me help you.
Yeah.
Obviously there's a balance between being we want to be our kids' parent, obviously, but we want to have long-term good relationships with them as well. So it's they're going to be older longer than they're going to be this age where they're looking at us for everything and all their answers and everything. So it's we want them to have good building blocks as well to have carry on to them when they're older.
Was that something kind of in the forefront of your mind of being able to, yes, you're establishing a structure, a discipline structure now,
right?
Were you thinking that far ahead of, I want to be able to do this so that it can lay the groundwork, it sounds like, for being able to have a really fruitful, kind of sustainable relationship with them as adults?
I think so, just because we have our relationship with our parents are very not traditional, or not, they're not healthy relationships. I don't have relationships with my parents as an adult. So it's I know that's definitely the end goal, right? You put all this time and effort and you have these babies and you raise them, you want to enjoy them in the future and see where they go, and you want to have a good relationship with them. And, so yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I imagine to kind of have, as you mentioned, maybe not that great of a relationship with your own parents, and kind of have that be what you're looking towards. It sounds like, maybe not necessarily having their input, or maybe limiting that just for your own well-being.
Oh yeah, there's no input.
Yeah. And so to have to then go and be a parent yourself, and figure this out, and kind of thinking in that, I don't want this, what I have with my parents, to have that with my children. And so I need to figure out, I don't know what that different looks like, but I need to figure that out. And it's really important to me because I want something different. I want something better.
And it's weird though, because it's my parents were good parents when we were younger. And I've talked to my older sibling that I guess he confided in her one time that he always could picture himself being a dad when his kids were younger, but not when his kids were adults. So it's I don't know if that's where the disconnect is, but because we did have decent childhoods. I don't feel like I have a lot of childhood trauma or certain things. I mean, I'm sure I do, just not as evident as other people. You can see oh yeah, this is what caused this. For the most part, they were present, they were together. We had a stable home environment,
so you maybe had that, what society says is kind of cookie cutter.
Right. Yes, exactly. But as far as being adult, it's completely absent. So it's so as far as that, they had a good childhood, but I don't know what I took or didn't take from their parenting as parenting us. And I was the youngest of four. So it's for me, I just saw a lot of what my siblings were going through. I'm oh, I'm not going to do that, or I will do that. So it's I feel like I didn't have to be parented as much as my sisters.
Gotcha.
I don't know if a lot of people experience that are on the younger end.
Yeah. Do you feel like you miss that relationship and being able to have them involved in that way?
No, because I know that they wouldn't be capable of having a healthy relationship. So I'm not missing out on that. Obviously, if I could have it my way and change who they are, but it's that's not reality. So no.
Absolutely. I imagine that was not an easy kind of reality to accept.
Yeah, it's taken time.
Yeah.
So
I know that that's something that I've heard many parents kind of struggle with, because there is maybe this expectation of, again, what this family structure is supposed to look like, ought to look like, and to then kind of stray away from that. I mean, that takes a lot of courage, a lot of just gusto to be able to trust that and say, you know what, I'm choosing my health and my well-being in this moment, and I'm choosing my family's health and well-being.
Yeah, I think that's a key thing too, because people might have like family and support in their life, but is it healthy support or is it like toxic support?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people say like they grow up and they're like, well, they're family. Like you need to have them in your life. Or I think on the opposite end of the spectrum, family does treat family a certain way because they think they can get away with it because they're like, well, we're family. You know?
I mean, almost that it's just that conditioning, right? We've been doing this pattern of interaction for so long. This is kind of what we know.
Yeah. Instead of feeling like, well, I can choose my family, you know, like, and blood doesn't make family. And like, that's obviously a big thing in our family because it's like, I'm my kids' a birth mom, but I'm not their biological mom. So it's like blood, and at the end of the day, doesn't mean anything. So.
Yeah. What is that a conversation that you have with your kids?
We've always from the get-go have been super honest with how they came to be, you know? So we haven't been because our kids were asking the other day, I don't know where the topic came up about getting a baby or how does where does the baby come from?
They're starting those questions.
You're like, oh, maybe when you're older, we'll talk about that. But yeah, they know, like, obviously we needed an outside source to conceive them and have them. But we've always been super honest with them. And I try to tell, our daughter so much hasn't asked a lot of questions. She's just I think maybe she's just younger and goes with the flow more, but our son has been more like, well, I kind of want a dad or I want a brother. It's either a dad or a brother, you know? But it's like, I try to tell them, well, like, their families are built all different ways. And, you know, you always have those friends and like people outside of our family that you can have those connections with. But it's like, this department's closed. And it's like, we can't guarantee you a brother. Well, we could if we wanted to. And obviously, but no.
That's like, a whole nother.
That's a whole other thing. And it's like, well, no, that's not the thing. Like you have a close friend and he has plenty of friends. But it's like, I think I don't take offense to it because I think it's normal to have those curiosities and feel that way. But you know, we just try to remind them that you have two people that love you and will be there for you no matter what, and, you know, support you and take care of you. And that's, at the end of the day, that should be what's important. And you know, so
I was just actually about to ask kind of what is your thought process when those questions happen? You know, is there something that you've done to be able, because I heard you mention, you know, I don't take offense, which, you know, I think that that's such a different narrative. Sometimes I hear from other folks that they hear that and that is the concern or that is their fear. And so, you know, I'm curious kind of what's been your thought process in your journey to kind of get to that place where it sounds like you have a little bit more compassion for the questions that are being asked.
Yeah, I guess like older generations probably would take more offense to like people's feelings outside of themselves.
Yeah.
So I guess just having that perspective and putting yourself in other people's shoes, and it's not about me, it's about him, you know? So
yeah,
I just know that we're doing our best and that's all we can do. And, you know, so.
And I think that's so relatable to so many of our parents that, you know, that we're out here, we're trying our best. You know, it sounds like for you, some of that best, right, is going out and seeking out supports and seeking out resources and knowledge that maybe you didn't have.
Right.
And so in that capacity, you're kind of doing what you can to be able to grow yourself, to better yourself for your family. And then also having that acceptance that we're going to screw up our children in some way, shape or form. It's just up to us to kind of try to mitigate, you know, that screw up because we're humans. And I feel like that's a pretty normal thing.
Yeah. And I think it's probably detrimental if you try to grow up showing your kids, like putting on a front that everyone's perfect and you have to be perfect and you have to like have certain emotions all the time. You know, that's probably detrimental in the long run because then if they encounter something or feel something, they're not going to feel comfortable with you because they're going to be like, oh man, I probably shouldn't be feeling this way or this is wrong or like, you know?
Yeah. So it almost sounds like normalizing the fact that emotions exist. Is that like a fair statement?
Yeah, because I feel like when I grew up, that's probably one of the things, like I never really saw conflict resolution or like healthy, you know, and I know that affects my relationships and relationships with your spouse and, you know, healthy conflict and resolving it and, you know, just don't sweep everything under the rug and eventually you think it's going to go away and then it's going to explode one day.
Spoiler alert, it doesn't go away. It usually grows.
That's why you got to hire Reesa.
Exactly, right? I mean, that's why I have a job. Yeah. Dream, though, my dream is to not have a job because everybody is just so amazingly healthy.
So in touch with our emotions and how to express it. Yeah, and just expressing them too. Like you will have emotions, but how to articulate it.
Yeah.
And on the other flip side, to be able to receive it from that person who's articulating it to you.
And I think that's a really great point, right? So many times we're like, yes, talk about your emotions. So when it's coming towards you and someone's saying, hey, I feel really angry that this happened, like it can be like, whoa, no, don't talk about your emotions. I don't like this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so,
that's so true.
But I think just recognizing it and understanding it and like giving each other grace too, and just know that it's a constant thing.
Yeah.
That you have to work towards. Like I've been with my wife for how many years? I don't know, 16. And it's a constant, like, constantly, like, it's not like it gets easier because you've been together longer, but obviously in raising kids too, and different chapters of those kids' needs, that, that plays a part in all the relationships happening in the house, and, just understanding and being open to that criticism and reflecting on yourself. Okay, what can I do? Or what do you need? What do I need? And so.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I really love kind of that, being open to the criticism and being able to see it as an opportunity to grow rather than like a personal attack and kind of a failure on your part.
Yeah, because it is hard to not feel that.
Absolutely.
Obviously, that's like people's like initial reaction. So it's like, check yourself.
And I think there's absolutely ways, right, to present the complaints, because that's kind of what I say a lot, is that true. Criticisms and like character attacks, like those are things that we want to adjust, right? But complaints are super duper natural and normal to have complaints, because you're whether it's complaints with your children and kind of some of that behavior, whether it's with friendships or, spousal relationships or partners or whatever that looks like, because we're talking about different human beings trying to coexist with one another. There's gonna be some growing pains in that.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're always changing, because then your kids are getting older.
Absolutely.
So then what you used to like, oh, I'm getting in the screw, but then they then it changes. And then it's like, oh, did you add the jalapeno?
So I'm wimpy. Oh. I like zero spice. So I'm gonna do half of this, and then I'll add the jalapeno because, Josh loves spice.
So he'll have all of these, and you'll have
zero.
All right. And don't blend it too much. Pulse it at first, because I don't know how your blender works, and then we can see the consistency. And obviously, everyone can change it how they want it. Yeah,
absolutely. Yes, mine is fairly strong. I'm not sponsored by NutriBullet, but hey, if you want to, I'm available to chat. So let me pulse it. Okay. Like, you talking like this?
I would do a little bit more.
Okay.
Yeah, a little more. And we can always check do a sample chip. But that looks kind of good.
Okay. So I'll pour a little bit of this, and then I'll blend it a little bit more with the jalapenos.
And you can just roughly chop.
Okay.
And we can always see if you need to add more lime or salt. It's pretty easy. And I like it that way too, because then it's like, you don't have to think about it.
Yeah, I heard you mention like there were some variations too that you do.
Like sometimes I'll add peppers. Like if we have leftover like snacking like bell peppers, you can add that, or if you wanted to, carrots or.
Yeah. Have you ever tried to make it kind of fruity?
I haven't. Like mango or pineapple? Yeah. That would be yummy though. That would be, especially in this heat wave we're having.
I love a good tropical anything.
Well, it's your roots, I'm sure. Right? But that looks good.
Yeah, does that look good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll taste that one. Let me chop this.
You want me to taste it while you're doing that?
Sure. You tell me. Okay.
It's good.
Yeah.
Probably a little bit more lime.
Okay.
And maybe some more salt. But I'm with Josh. I don't like too spicy, but I definitely want a little bit of spice. But this would be great if your kids do. What about
Yeah.
your boys? Do they like any spice or no?
So Makoa can handle a little bit heat. I think he can handle a little bit more than he gives himself credit for. But my Malachi is just like me. It's like a little bit. It's like, oh no. But you know, again, I blame some of my own family trauma and the reason why I don't like heat. That's a story for another day.
It was forced on you.
So it used to get put. I used to suck my thumb. My grandmother taught me how to suck my thumb because she used to babysit me.
Like self-soothe.
Yeah. And they wanted me to stop. So they put hot sauce on my thumb. So that's fine.
But you were old enough to remember that too?
Oh yeah, I knew.
Oh geez.
I knew about it.
That's rough.
For sure. But yeah, so I'm curious.
Oh, and a little bit more lime, yeah.
A little bit lower. Yes, yeah. That's right. And so what does, because I heard you mention kind of going back to discipline and making sure that it's something that's kind of age appropriate almost. And that the expectations, it sounds like, are kind of age appropriate. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes. And it's like, we've tried to Google like what punishments are appropriate. And a lot of times too, I've read like you're not supposed to do punishments.
Okay. Tell me more.
Because it causes your kids to not trust you. And then they'll then they get scared to get in trouble. So then they'll just hide things from you or lie to you. So then it just causes, basically you're supposed to just sit down and have a conversation about why they did this or what made them do that or, you know, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And but it's like, to me too, that's like, I feel like, I know a lot of people talk about natural consequences. Okay. Which I still get confused by. Because it's like in certain obviously I feel like when they're younger, like if you tell them to stop playing with something or doing something, a natural consequence is that they would get hurt, right? Okay. But I feel like when they get older and it's more of like a emotional thing or like conflict thing, there's not really like a natural consequence besides like, I don't know, you guys aren't going to get along anymore. Like, yeah, I feel like it has to be like probably like in the moment immediate, and that's probably not as realistic. So it's like, I don't know.
It is absolutely a hard one to manage. And I hear you saying about the punishment. And one of the things I actually, I had read when I was doing a lot of my grad school work and just all my training, that for me to this day has really resonated, was the idea that, you know, nowadays the word punishment and discipline have become really synonymous with one another. Okay. And they were saying the word discipline actually kind of root word was meaning to teach versus like punishment being like, here's just like, I'm going to, you know,
take something away.
Yeah. Flogging, you know, like to do a harsh, you know, thinking back in the old days kind of deal. And so kind of that idea of like, are there ways to tease out, you know, discipline being something very separate than thinking of it as punishment, and doing it from that lens of how can I teach them skills, kind of like you were talking about, those skills for the future versus like in the right now. You know, for example, I know that, you know, there are many generations who might choose to kind of do any kind of like a spanking or something like that, for example. You know, and the idea there is that it generally has a really immediate effect, right? You know, because they're like, oh, I don't want to do that. So they stop. Right. However, does it necessarily teach them for future? Right. Because, you know, when they're out in the real world, they do something in their job that's maybe inappropriate. Their boss isn't going to spank them. I mean, they might try to, but that's inappropriate. That's an HR thing. So make sure you get that checked out. But, you know, in general, that's not necessarily the teaching lesson.
And that's not really a sustainable punishment. You're not going to be spanking your high schooler.
And could you imagine that? No. Especially like for those that are like twice your size, like trying to like.
No.
Yeah. And so, you know, kind of reframing that and like, how can I teach, like you said? And so maybe it does include a little bit more of that, like problem solving conversations and kind of meeting them where they're at emotionally. Yeah. And then saying, okay, like I totally appreciate your emotions. And then that does sound really frustrating. What are some other things that we could do with our frustration instead of just, you know, pushing our sibling or, you know, whatever that looks like.
Right. Exactly. That's so true.
Yeah. Okay. So let's blend up this guy with your spiciness.
Yes.
And then, do you want to add salt?
Yes. Let's add some salt.
Yes.
When I make it with my son, he always likes to test the salt and be like, Needs a little bit more salt.
Is he your taste tester?
Yes.
I swear, I've got amazing kitchen helpers. I really think it's because when they're kitchen helpers, they get to be taste testers, and that's the best part, right?
Well, yeah, and you make lots of yummy foods too.
Well, and I love learning more, so I'm so excited. Okay, let's pulse this guy.
Yeah, you can probably pulse them a lot.
There we go.
Really need it. You can probably even.
Oh, it's because I didn't have it on. There we go.
Yeah, you gotta blend in that jalapeno in there.
You don't want big chunks?
No.
Okay, let's try it out.
Let's try the difference.
This is the safer Reesa.
It'll probably be. I wonder if we'll see the color difference, and that one's blended a little bit more. So
there you go.
Oh yeah, you can definitely see. But yeah. Do they eat stuff like this, chips and salsa? Your boys?
Absolutely. So it's gonna be a hit. We'll get some. Do they have the heat?
Yeah.
Is it better though on the salt and lime?
Were those jalapenos from your garden at all, or no?
No, we don't have. Since I don't eat them, I don't grow them. I only grow stuff I'm gonna eat.
Yeah. If you wanted to blend this one up, you could if you wanted. It's just to your preference.
I'm good with like a little chunkiness.
Okay.
So I'm curious for those that like maybe disagree or would prefer that your kids were quote unquote more well behaved, right? And how do you navigate that out in the real world to be able to kind of stand true to your beliefs and it sounds like your values while also battling the looks, the unsolicited comments.
Like if you have to like do like punish or
any of that.
Correct in person, not punish. Correct. I think that's funny that you bring that up though, because we were at a party a couple weekends ago, and there was our son didn't make a great choice, but obviously, like there's no innocent party in the situation,
Absolutely.
right? But my wife was really good about just dealing with it right then and there. And like, he wasn't in trouble, but he needed to step aside and think about what he did or what he can do different.
For sure.
And she handled it right then and there. And there was a couple moms who were like, wow, I can't believe you just like did that right here. Normally I like just don't deal with it until later. And then it's like,
interesting.
So I think just knowing like people are going to judge either way. Cause like, obviously maybe if we didn't do anything, people would be like,
oh, why aren't they handling their kid? Yeah, right? I can appreciate that.
Versus like just handling it in the situation, maturely, like obviously not, you need to read the room, like do what's appropriate in the moment. But so I think just knowing that people are going to probably judge you one way, even though moms shouldn't judge each other, we're all doing our best.
Right. Well, maybe having a little bit more compassion for all of us parents that again, it's,
but yeah. And it's like, I'm thinking, well, if you don't handle it in the moment, like I'll forget for sure, and your kid's going to probably forget too. It's kind of like,
a really fair point.
I don't want to compare kids to dogs, but it's kind of the same thing. Like if you don't correct the dog in the moment, they're not going to remember.
Yeah.
So it's like, just knowing that you have to, you don't want them to get away with it, but people are going to look at you or, and hopefully the more you do that, the less times you would have to do it.
And I think that's exactly the point right behind that idea of the teaching is that we're teaching that hopefully, like you said, we're decreasing future stuff. So yes, maybe there's growing pains and it is a little bit more uncomfortable because you're having to, like you said, kind of in that moment amongst a party, kind of sit down with your kiddo and kind of have a real talk with them. But that hopefully in the future that's, decreased because they've learned the skills. They've kind of been able to have a grown-up who's willing to dialogue with them about what their emotions were, what are some alternative ways that we can manage those emotions. And here, now we can apply it to all these other situations, because I imagine, the feelings of frustration, the feelings of sadness or anger, with Inside Out too, now all the other emotions that they're helping teach the kiddos, that hopefully those are things that are likely going to show up at another point in their life. And I think you're so right of being able to then teaching them now for that future.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's good too that like the parents, like as you're a team and you support each other, you know, like, so I was proud of my wife in that moment to just like handle it, you know, because I think sometimes I'm better at other situations and she's better at other situations, and, you know, just supporting each other and being on the same page and showing that like you're in a united front to your kids too. So.
Was that a conversation that the two of you had prior? Like you went into it making decisions like, hey, this is how we're going to handle the discipline?
I guess not a formal conversation.
Okay.
I guess just like knowing each other and like being on the same page in general. So, but yeah, I think it's probably always a good idea to, you know, have a conversation prior. But
I mean, I think the fact that you folks, it sounds like, are willing to kind of vibe off of each other, support each other, even if it's maybe not the exact way that you would handle it, you know, being able to still show that appreciation and show that gratitude for them showing up and being willing to walk with you on this journey. Because if you have that support, I mean, not everybody does.
Right. Yeah.
And so, hard. Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, being able to then say like, thanks for even just showing up for me and being able to do this, because parenting is, I mean, that's just the overwhelming thing behind this podcast, right? Parenting is so hard.
And I don't think like you talk to people who have older kids, like I think it's just hard in different ways. So it's like, we're just in it.
Yeah.
For the thick of it, the long run, you know? So Absolutely. It's like.
And I think, you know, yes, we're in the thick of it now for this particular milestone. But then when we hit the next milestone, we're going to be in a different kind of thing.
I know. Yeah.
And then same thing when they're adults. I imagine kind of that care and compassion for their well-being and for their thriving success isn't necessarily going to go away.
No, and it's probably harder in certain ways because you don't have that control anymore either.
Yeah.
You know, but you still have to be like on the sidelines, like,
you got this.
Yeah, like even if they're making choices that you wouldn't necessarily make for them, you know, you can't make it for them, obviously. You got to let them learn too. Yeah. So knowing that balance in the future, like I can't even like, it gets overwhelming. Okay, like just let's focus on right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think though, as you mentioned, you're kind of doing what you can now in as far as being able to teach them the skills, being able to cultivate a relationship, as you mentioned, that they feel comfortable, they feel safe to be able to have these conversations.
Yes, we want them to trust us.
Exactly. And so the hope is then they're continuing, right, to take that into the future with them. So when they are struggling, maybe instead of going to, you know, WebMD or, you know, any of those like resources, they're actually coming and they're having conversations with you and being willing to have you be a part of their life because you are investing in that relationship now. And I think that's so amazing.
Yes. So we do our best.
Yes, absolutely. Are there any like insights, like if you could go back in time and tell yourself something in order to prepare for some of the things that you've learned now?
Like if there was a handbook?
Yeah, because we don't have a handbook, which is, I mean, I think that's a design flaw. But like, is there anything that you would share with yourself, or maybe?
I don't know. I've never really thought about it. I know for sure when they were younger, like when they were babies.
Yeah.
I know for sure just trusting your instincts, because there's so many outside information that comes in, like, you know, when you have the baby, from the nurses, from the doctors. And so I think just trusting your maternal instincts when they were younger, that I would have told myself, because I definitely did that with our daughter versus our son. And like, it was way easier in the beginning when she was a newborn, because I'm like, I'm just going to listen to me, listen to her. And I know we got this.
Yeah.
Instead of like trying to be on some schedule, and, you know, it gets very stressful that way.
Absolutely.
But like, as far as like when they're this age, I don't know. I haven't thought about it. I still feel like, obviously I know, like I need to remind myself, you know, be patient, and just like, I think that's what it ties into, is just having those standards that are realistic.
Okay.
And that, you know, so just remembering that and just learning how to navigate that. And
so maybe almost like it's okay to not be perfect.
Yeah. And I think too, like just knowing that, you know, they're going to push the boundaries, and that's what they're supposed to do. And just having better reactions to it and just knowing how to navigate it,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think
too, and like each milestone, like you said, it goes by so fast too. So just, even though if you are frustrated or you're tired, like just enjoy the moment that you are in with them, because like before you know it, they're going to be in a different phase of life, and you can't go back.
So maybe even, I know that was something I've had other guests that have mentioned, just kind of finding those ways to be able to find the joy in some of those milestones. And maybe it does mean that for right now, we're not nipping every little thing.
Yeah, like picking your battles, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And we have really good kids too. Like, I don't want to make it sound like
absolutely
we have hard kids, but obviously like no kid is perfect, but I do feel like we have really good kids. So we're really lucky in that way. And
not only that, it's just they are kids. So even the kids that are having difficulties, that's their job. That's what we're doing. And so, being able to then kind of reflect, how can I support them? Being able to explore, being able to figure out who they are. In a healthy, like, we're putting limits on them, or we're putting limits that are kind of appropriate, like you said, age appropriate, that are in consideration for their, developmental abilities, where they're at. Just there's so much, but still having limits. Maybe we give them a little bit bigger of a box, right, to kind of roam around in, and not just be like, do whatever you want. I'm not here.
Because we all know how that turns out.
Absolutely.
I mean, I do feel like from being from a big family, I think too, like, that nature versus nurture argument all the time. But there is definitely a part where I think some people are just born certain ways. Yeah. I think so no matter what you do as a parent, they're probably going to be a certain way, like as an adult. But it's like, just doing our best, But like you also want to enjoy it too, because it's like, what is the whole point at the end of the day, being a parent and having these kids, if you're not enjoying it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it can be hard to remember that, when you're in it. Yeah. And you're like you said, trying to do this battle and pick your battles. And at the same time, you're like, I want to raise a good human being.
I know.
So like, which battle do I pick? Because I don't know.
I know.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think the fact that people even care nowadays, that's like probably the first and the most important step.
Yeah.
Because like, from like older generations, like kids should be seen, not heard, or whatever, like, they would say. So it's like,
but that's been the mantra. And I think what you mentioned even in the beginning is that what's kind of neat about our generation and those that are even coming after us, that there is so much more willingness to kind of pull back that curtain and say, like, it doesn't have to look like your neighbors, and that's okay. And that, it's not always sunshine and rainbows, that there are things that are difficult, and maybe having a little bit more compassion and a little bit more grace for the emotions, for the behaviors that they're still learning to kind of.
Yeah, because even adults still act like.
Even adults.
Like they have no control.
Oh yeah. So again, can we really expect kiddos to behave in ways that even adults, you've got work. Sometimes you hear these work stories, you hear friendship stories, family stories of just, people kind of going all over the place, and you kind of look at it like, thought we were all adults here, but maybe not.
Right. Exactly.
And then at the same time, we're expecting our kids who have more of, an excuse, for lack of a better word, to be able behave to kind of, not have all those filters, because they're not necessarily developed enough to have those filters, to have the rationalization and the logic to go, if I do this, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I totally makes sense. And I so appreciate you being willing to chat with me today and share a little bit about your story and helping pull back that curtain and being the change that we want to see.
Of course.
So, thank you so much. Yeah.
This was awesome. This was really fun. This is my first podcast video type thing. So hopefully I did okay for you.
Yes. Well, it was amazing. And I'm so excited. I know my family is super excited for this also to try it. So thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you, Reesa.
Yes. And thank you everyone for tuning in. We'll see you next time. If you or anyone that you know is struggling with any of the topics that we discussed in today's episode, make sure to check out our show notes for support and resources. You can get help. Thanks again for joining us on today's episode of The Real Family Eats. If you're a parent ready to share your real life parenting story, make sure to reach out to us in our website found in the show notes. And that goes for today's recipe, social medias, support, and resources. All of that can be found in our show notes. So make sure to check them out. And make sure to follow, like, share, subscribe, and stay up to date on all things The Real Family Eats. I hope you'll join us next time for more food for thought and thoughtful food. Enjoy your eats.